What are the Raiders going to do at the NFL trade deadline by 4 p.m. Eastern time today? My name is Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and if I sat up here and always try to predict what Pete Carroll John Spytek and the Las Vegas Raiders were going to do, it'd be a difficult thing. So what I decided to do today is, you know what? I'm going to give you my perfect trade deadline plan for the silver and black, because there's reports out there that they could be buyers. There's reports out there they could be sellers. There's reports out there that might not do anything. But if there's one thing that I'll say, the Raiders, in my personal opinion, I think should be not only buyers, but I also think that they should be sellers, and you're going to see that in my plan today. So the first thing that I want to do in my perfect trade deadline plan, trade the fat. And this almost reminds me of one of my favorite movies out there. Shout out to Horrible Bosses, where they're like, we just got to cut the fat. We got to cut the fat people. We're not going to get rid of the fatties, because in all honesty, the Raiders need more fatties on the interior, whether it be the offensive line or the defensive line. When I'm saying trade the fat, I'm saying let's cut away the players. Let's move on from the guys that either A, aren't doing anything for us. Maybe it's a veteran. Maybe it's somebody that's going to be a free agent next offseason that we know is not going to be a long-term solution for this team. And the first person that I'm going to bring up here is going to be Malcolm Koonce. And I would trade him for a day 3 pick. I think you're probably going to end up getting a 6th, 7th rounder. It's probably going to be a late round pick swap, if I'm being 100% honest, just because of how bad Malcolm has played this entire season. And, quite frankly, Malcolm has really only had 8 good games in his entire career, and that was back in 2023 with Antonio Pierce as the interim head coach. But other players that I would try to trade, and, let me work through this a little bit. Devin White at linebacker. Anybody that thinks that Devin White is a good NFL linebacker in today's day and age, I really need you to really educate yourself and watch some of the film, because he's horrific. He's a guy that, I'll be real, I don't think that he can cover. I think he over-pursues way too much and just is a bad long-term option. If it was up to me, I'd play a lot more Jamal Adams. I'd get a lot more Eichenberg in there. Hell, I wouldn't even mind going out trying to find another linebacker. For Leki Fotu, move on from him. You got 2 young defensive tackles that you drafted. I'd rather see those guys get run. Zamir White's horrific. And if you can get a 2027 7th-round pick for him, I would take it. You could see that Genty's the good running back we have. Mostert's much better on special teams. For Kenny Pickett or Aidan O'Connell, I put both of these guys up here, not saying that I would trade both of them, but both of them are up here because I think that you should trade one or the other. And if you plan on benching Geno, or if Geno gets hurt, one of these quarterbacks has to go in. But Kenny Pickett is too good to be a quarterback 3. Aidan O'Connell, too good to be a quarterback 3. So whoever your quarterback 2 is, I would trade the other player. Dylan Parham is going to make this list because he's not going to be somebody that we keep on this team long term. So because you drafted Charles Grant, you drafted Caleb Rogers, I don't think that either of those players is better than Dylan Parham. But I would entertain the idea of moving on from Parham. Hell, I'd entertain the idea of moving on from Alex Kappa. Malcolm Koonce and them, Tyree Wilson. I want you to look at that position next to Tyree Wilson. I am a believer that if the Raiders do not want to play him at defensive tackle and they're only going to line him up at defensive end, then trade him away because he has no value. If you want to use him at DT, then I would say to hang on to him. But here's my question to you, because we sit up here, we hear reports from Rappaport, which if you didn't see the video that he did yesterday, please go check it out. But there is trades, this, and that. If you could trade any player on the Raiders, who would you trade away? And I want you to answer this question honestly. I know we're going to get some people that honestly answer it with their heart. I want you to not only answer this with your heart, I want you to answer this with your head. And think of it as players that could actually be traded by the Las Vegas Raiders. My answer is going to be coming up here after this YouTube ad break. I already know we're going to get a lot of Geno Smith, but it's not Geno Smith. The reason why the number one player that if I'm the Raiders, I'm going to try to trade away is Malcolm Koonce is because Malcolm is non-factor. He's a non-factor on Sundays. He's a non-factor on game days, and it's just so clear that I don't even know how the hell he's out there on the field. I want somebody to go out there and compete. And in my personal opinion, if we're trying to do what we should be doing moving forward, you trade away Malcolm Koonce, you activate Tonka Hemingway and J.J. Pegues, you let those 2 guys roam around on your interior a little bit, and by moving on from Malcolm, you go out and you get another defensive lineman. That's exactly what I would do, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit. Let's go to my next perfect plan here for the Raiders. You got to keep your key pieces, and there's going to be teams that look at you and they smell blood in the water because they smell a 2-6 football team. But I'll tell you this, I don't want you to trade away assets that I do think could be valuable to you in the long term. So my do not trade list is you're not going to move on from Maxx Crosby. You're not going to move on from Jackson Powers-Johnson. Very key there. You're going to notice the name Jakobi Meyers. And some of you might be surprised that Jakobi's on this list. I'm only saying do not trade Jakobi unless you get a second or a third-round pick. If you get a second or third, well, then I'm going to take that second or third, and I'm going to move on from Jakobi. I'm going to retool and restock up so that way I can be ready to rock and roll in 2026. 2027. Do not move on from Tre Tucker. He's in his third year. I would be really ticked off if that happened. I know we haven't seen anything from Decamerion Richardson, but he is a young, athletic corner that I do hope can give you some special teams value down the road, and I hope that he can end up being a decent player. So that's somebody that I don't really want to move on from. Michael Mayer, Eric Stokes. I talked about those guys in great lengths on my video that I did on Monday afternoon. If you haven't seen it, go check that one out. And then you're going to be like, well, wait a minute, Mitch. You said Tyree Wilson on that last part. I did. Tyree Wilson, the defensive end, I would trade. Tyree Wilson, the defensive tackle, I would not trade. My point is, put Tyree at defensive tackle and keep some of these key pieces. Do not let teams swoop in and steal away a player like Jackson Powers-Johnson. Let's go to the next one here. Don't make dumb deals. Sometimes when the NFL trade deadline gets close, there are some teams that are like, all right, well, there's certain players out there, and teams just go out and they make deals, but they make dumb deals. And I want the Raiders to be active during the trade deadline. I want them to be active from a what I do standpoint for a living in terms of making content, but I also want them to be active. And when I say active, I'm not necessarily meaning you got to go make a trade. I would rather you be active taking calls, listening to what teams are offering, or picking up the phone and making a call and going out and trying to get somebody. But if you do a dumb deal, it can really set your team back. And one of the things that I'm worried about is all the trade rumors that I've been hearing around Jackson Powers-Johnson. And if the Raiders want to move on from a guy like JPJ, well, then you need to replace him with an offensive lineman. And according to Josina Anderson, one team the Giants have trade talks on regarding guard Evan Neal was the Raiders. This occurred about 1.5 to 2 weeks ago per league sources. Evidently, it didn't lead to urgent action at said time. Nonetheless, it's insight on who's been inquiring. If the Raiders go out and they trade for Evan Neal, I just can't help out this franchise. I can't help out this organization from just doing, dumb things over and over again. Don't get me wrong. I liked Evan Neal a lot coming out of college. I liked him coming out of Alabama, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Alex Leatherwood, a player that, let's be honest, not physical enough, doesn't love football enough, doesn't, I think, go in there and work as hard as he's supposed to work. And at the end of the day, I think he was hidden by some of his lackluster ability just because he was on a very good overall team and overall offensive line, much so like Alex Leatherwood. But here's the fact. Everybody in the NFL is talented. And if you're unwilling to take that next step and do what is necessary to continuously getting better in the NFL, you're going to fall behind. And that's what happened here with Evan Neal. It's what happened with Alex Leatherwood. My point is, if the Raiders are going to go out and you're going to make a trade, why the F would you make a trade for somebody on the offensive line? And I say that because I'm frustrated with Alex Kappa. But if we're going to make some drastic changes to the line, it would just make more sense, in all honesty, for you to put JPJ at center, for you to put Jordan Meredith at guard, or you just use Charles Grant or Caleb Rogers, even if they're not ready to go yet. That was 2 third-round picks that you invested in. And I would rather those guys get their lumps. I would rather those guys learn the ropes. I would rather them just get the extra reps at offensive line before you go out and you trade for a player that, let's face it, has shown you is not a good football player at all. Coming up next year, though, we're going to continuously roll through this perfect Raiders trade deadline plan. And there's a lot of different things that we could look at, no doubt about it. And it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but I tried to come up with the perfect idea for me of what I would do if I was sitting down in a room with Pete Carroll and John Spytek. Also, fellas, you want to look sharp? Well, shout out to our sponsor, Chubbies, because when you meet the family this holiday, you got to check out that you're making sure you're looking great. And you know what? From family dinners to holiday parties, Chubby's has you covered. So you can focus on being yourself and letting the good times roll. This holiday season, spread cheer and a little drip with Chubby's. Perfect for upgrading your own winter rotation or gifting to that one person who already, quote, has everything. For a limited time, Chubby's is giving our listeners 20% off your purchase at Chubby's with the promo code ChatSports at checkout. But if it's Black Friday, skip the code, take advantage of even bigger markdowns during their exclusive Black Friday sale. Just head to chubbyshorts.com. Make sure to support our show and tell them that we sent you. So for me personally, I don't know if I told you all this. I've been debating whether or not I want to go out to Las Vegas to watch Raiders-Cowboys. I'm going to be honest. I'm not doing it anymore. What I am going to be doing is I'm going home for the holidays. Shout out to the 570. I'm going to be there. It's literally for like 4 to 5 days right before Christmas time. And if you know anything about central Pennsylvania, they love flannels. And my buddy, I already know him. I was literally looking at pictures of him today because he posted something for a Halloween. He dressed up as a farmer. You know how often people do that where I'm from? It happens all the time. And, I mean, they got flannels. They have some awesome NFL gear. So whether you're trying to sit out by the campfire, whether you're trying to go out for a little tailgating, or you're just relaxing at home and you're used to the South and you go back home and it's 30, 40 degrees. And I'm not going to lie, it's a weird thing to be able to get adjusted to. But Chubby's is a great gift idea. Chubby's is a great thing to be able to wear, and I can't wait to be able to rock them when I go home to visit my family during the holidays. So, one more time here for a limited time, Chubby's is giving our listeners 20% off your purchase at Chubby's with the promo code ChatSports. That's ChatSports at checkout. But if it's Black Friday, skip the code. Take advantage of an even bigger markdowns during their exclusive Black Friday sale. Just head to chubbyshorts.com. Make sure to support the Raiders Report. Tell them that we sent you. That link is going to be down in the comments section. It is going to be down in the description on today's show. Let's keep it moving here on my Raiders Perfect trade deadline plan. So I already said we're trading the fat. We got to get rid of some of these pieces. But then I want to keep some of our key pieces as we build forward. Don't make any dumb deals just to make a deal. But if you are going to make a trade, I think the biggest area that this team needs help, and believe me, there's a lot of holes on this team. But hear me out. I think we need defensive help the most. And I think we need defensive help the most for the first reason, got to get Maxx Crosby somebody else. Somebody else got to be able to help Mad Max. And whether you're looking at our defensive tackle room, there isn't a lot of talent here. Let's just be honest with ourselves. And I should also mention, you guys can probably tell those pictures aren't right. John Ulalu is not a twin. Thomas Booker, it's the wrong picture there for Booker. Yeah, I don't know how we ended up doing that. But overall, this is a team, though, like, let's be honest. Like, they lack talent at defensive tackle. They lack talent at defensive end. And I'm sick and tired of teams double team and triple team and Maxx Crosby, and all they're doing is they're just going after him, they're just pursuing him, and they're really just trying to bring him down. That's literally the only thing that this organization is realistically doing. And if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking at what else I have from a talent standpoint. And if I'm looking at what else I have from a talent standpoint, I want the Raiders to go out and get defensive line help, but I really want them to do it at the edge rusher position because I think our solving issues are easier at defensive tackle. Now, I would put Tyree Wilson at DT, and I would continue to rotate our defensive tackles, but guess what I would do? I would play Tonka Hemingway more, who continues to be a healthy scratch, somebody that we drafted in the 4th round of the NFL draft. I would play J.J. Pegues a little bit more because you saw in that game against Jacksonville, and you've seen it a bunch of times this season, we don't have the depth at the defensive line, so our players get gassed, and they get gassed very, very quickly. But if you go out and you add an edge rusher, that puts a little bit more pressure on the quarterback. It helps out your defensive tackles a little bit more. It also helps out your linebackers who cannot cover. It helps out your safeties and cornerbacks where you also lack a little bit of depth. The number one way that you can fix this defense, the easiest way, is by going out and getting some guys that can get after the quarterback. Because if you get guys that can get after the quarterback, it will help out our entire secondary. We're going to get Lonnie Johnson Jr. back. You are going to start playing Darian Porter a little bit more. You saw this team be better in the first half of that game last week. The problem was, though, you got gassed. And I think if you go out and you add a defensive lineman, you could really help out this defense. So to me, here are 8 players, and I'm just going to throw out there the first 7 names that you see in Bradley Chubb, Carl Granderson, Arden Key, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Jermaine Johnson, Draymond Jones, and Matthew Judon. Those are all edge rushers / defensive ends, and some of these guys could play an outside linebacker role, and quite frankly, I think the number one job that the Raiders are really missing from being able to get after the quarterback because Malcolm Koonce has been so bad is a Kayvon Chasen type role. And those are players that I would potentially be interested bringing in to play that type of role. I also have down there Mazi Smith, and Mazi's an offensive tackle who's been a bust with the Dallas Cowboys, but if you're able to get him for a cheap type of deal, put him with somebody like a Rob Leonard, who knows? Anything is possible. But I do really, truly believe if the Raiders are trying to win football games, and they are serious about trying to win football games, I would go out and I would get a defensive lineman. And I would go out and try to get an edge rusher. Make Maxx happy, because if you make Maxx happy, it's going to make the defensive line happy. And if your defensive line's better, it's going to make your linebackers and your entire secondary from top to bottom better. But let's keep on talking about the secondary, because to me, I would try to add secondary talent. And if you're not going to try to go out and add a linebacker that can cover, and I'm not saying that you need to add a linebacker that can cover. If I'm the Raiders, I go out and I add either another corner and I add another safety, and then I turn Jeremy Chinn into that full-time nickel linebacker type of role and just put Devin White's ass on the bench, if I'm being honest. I would put Devin White's ass on the bench. I would put a Landon Roberts' ass on the bench. I would use a little bit more of Jamal Adams, Jeremy Chinn as that linebacker nickel hybrid type of role, because we just need guys that can cover. And if you do that, yes, you're taking away a player from that secondary, but you get Lonnie Johnson back, and then you go out and you add somebody else to that secondary. Maybe it's a Reek Woolen. Maybe you decide to put Reek Woolen at cornerback. And I had an interesting thought the other day about this Raiders defense of, we've been hooting and hollering about this team trying to add a safety. I think Reek Woolen at 6'4", 210 pounds is athletic enough to potentially be able to play a safety cornerback hybrid role where you leave Eric Stokes out there on an island. He's been your cornerback number 1. You let Isaiah Pola-Mao play up a little bit closer to the line. And then if you want to drop Reek Woolen back as a safety, if Isaiah Pola-Mao's playing up, and then that allows Darian Porter to also play on the outside. Or you could put Reek Woolen on the outside, and if you want to drop Darian Porter back a little bit, you have the opportunity to do that. But this team clearly lacks depth at corner, and they clearly lack depth in the secondary. The other corner I'm going to throw out here is going to be Alontae Taylor, and Darnay Holmes ended up getting sit down on the bench. Again, if I'm going to put Jeremy Chinn at that nickel hybrid role, what if we converted him a little bit more to linebacker? You go out and you get an Alontae Taylor who can play on the outside, who can play on the inside, who's got ties to Marcus Robinson, our cornerback coach here for the Raiders. Another option, and this is going to be a crazy one, it's Budda Baker. Now, I am recording this video before the Monday Night Football game between the Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals, but there has been rumors out there about Budda in the past, and this has been an organization that has showed interest in Baker. Also, Marcus Robinson has had ties with Baker from his time back in Arizona, and we know how important coaching relationships are. So if Baker at age 29 is on the market, who knows? Maybe the Raiders could pick up the phone and call. The last one here, I don't think it's going to happen, but the Raiders do need a safety. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think, is going to be the best safety on the open market that a team could actually potentially go out and trade for, because Miami is just selling left and right. I mean, they literally sold Jalen Phillips. They've been trading pieces one after another. And if you're the Raiders, and I get it, you're not a winning team right now. But to me, if I'm going to make a trade, you make a trade for Reek Woolen because he's a long-term option. You make a trade for Alontae Taylor, long-term option. You make a trade for Budda Baker, and I get it, it might not be a long-term option, but at 29 years old, he's going to be able to help you out for the next 2 to 3 years. Or you go out and get a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, and that's somebody who, again, is going to be able to help you out for the long-term option. Also, Minkah does have ties to several Raiders players. He also has ties with Patrick Graham, which is very important. To me, that is my perfect Raiders trade deadline plan, and I know it's still a little bit up in the air of what this organization could do, but I want them to cut the fat, trade a player away like Malcolm Koonce, You keep key pieces like a Jackson Powers-Johnson. You don't make dumb deals just for the sake of making a dumb deal. I don't want Pete to go out and get just another Pete Carroll guy because he's a Pete Carroll guy. Go out, add some extra talent on that defensive line, and if you add talent in that secondary, I do really think you'd be shocked of how much better this overall team could be from top to bottom. So here's my question to you. If you made it this far in the video, I want you to grade my perfect Las Vegas Raiders trade deadline plan for 2025. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. And if you made it this far in the video, I promise you this. If I see these grades, I'm going to know one thing, that you're a real one and you made it to the very, very end of this Raiders video. I hope that the Silver and Black are active. I hope that they go out and do anything. And if they do anything, well, then you should already know I am going to be live for the NFL trade deadline at noon Eastern time. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure those notifications are turned on, and make sure you're ready for a wild day around the NFL.